Welcome to the Outsider Philosopher. So I've done a number of videos on the question of free will and determinism. And I've been pushing back on Robert Sapolsky in particular, because he has the book out, Determined, and he's been doing a number of podcasts making the argument that we have no free will whatsoever. And so in the process of doing these videos, obviously, I've been giving this issue a lot of thought, but some of my videos have taken off and there's been a lively exchange in the comments. And I'm doing my best to respond to good faith comments, whether they be supportive or critical. And it's giving me a window into how people think about this issue. There really does seem to be sort of two minds on this, and I am fascinated by the other side. Like, it's one of these things. I think people come to it and they're like, how could anybody believe you know opposite of what I believe? And I feel that way about determinism. The fact of free will seems just so apparent, just so intuitive, just like consciousness itself. It's just, so undeniable that it really does fascinate me that people could be so, adamant about denying free will. And it's also, to me, it's kind of like a game of chess. Um, they make a move, I make a move, they make a point, I make a point. But I'm going to be giving this the title something along the lines of Checkmating Robert Sapolsky. And I believe that I've come to sort of the Occam's razor on this issue that I don't think determinists can come back from. Now, I know that's saying a lot. This debate has been, going on for thousands of years, at least since the Greeks. But I believe I've come to the Occam's razor on this. And it came to me by really thinking through the other side. So I'm going to share my screen. And so I'm just going to read a comment, an exchange on my latest video. If you'd like a real deep dive into free will and determinism, and some of the more esoteric reasons why free will must exist, I highly recommend my last video. Gödel rages against Sapolsky and Dennett's machine. It can't handle the infinite. I think Kurt Gödel's incompleteness theorems establish as rigorously as can be done, I would argue irrefutably, that there is something infinite to consciousness. And since you and I are conscious beings, we are at root infinite. And it's the main reason why computers will never be conscious, because computation is always a finite process. But like I said, I've been doing my best to read the comments and respond to those I feel are, commenting in good faith, even if they don't agree with me. And so I'm going to read this gentleman's comment here. Another commenter commented in response and then asked me to weigh in again. And it was in this exchange that I felt like I got the other side. Like I finally understood, okay, I see what you're saying and why you believe that free will is absurd. But then through seeing it that way, there's this problem that's left over. And it's this leftover problem that determinists can't answer that I think finally ends the debate and establishes free will as something that must exist as a ontological primary, as just a fact of existence that maybe itself can't be explained, but it just must be an inherent quality of the universe as we find it. And I will do my best to explain that. And the way I get at these things is to sort of lay the groundwork for where the thought came from. So this is a long comment, but it's well written. And if you're interested in this topic, I really think this gets at both the core reason there are such hardcore determinists out there, and also the one fact that determinism can't explain, that only free will can explain, that I think finally would end the debate. So the problem of free will goes much deeper than any of these issues we're usually talking about when discussing it, like determinism, materialism / physicalism versus dualism or idealism, etc. The fundamental philosophical problem has really nothing to do with mechanical determinism or anything like that. The problem existed long before the modern scientific revolution and modern scientific materialism and the idea that the universe is a big machine. In fact, your fundamental ontology is basically irrelevant to the question. It doesn't really matter whether the universe is a deterministic machine or if we have immaterial, immortal souls created by God, and so on. The basic philosophical problem of free will remains. And it doesn't matter whether the universe is deterministic or not either. It doesn't even matter whether God exists or not. The fundamental problem is this: you want to do whatever you want to do. You choose whatever you choose because you are the way you are. It emanates from your very nature. So the mind, every particular mind of every particular person, has the preferences it has due to its very nature, in interaction with the environment, of course. This is the case no matter if the mind is a purely physical phenomenon or a non-physical soul. So it really doesn't matter whether you are a materialist, a dualist, or an idealist when it comes to free will. It doesn't make any sense no matter what. Let me put it this way: I'm an atheist, but even if God existed, I don't think the concept of free will would make any sense. I don't think God himself would have any free will if he existed. The concept is just logically incoherent. It doesn't make any sense. God, or anyone else for that matter, having free will would be equivalent to him being able to create a rock that is too heavy for him to lift. It is basically self-contradictory. The magic doesn't help you. So, just that last sentence there, the magic doesn't help you. That's Sapolsky's magic that I talk about in places. When pressed, Sapolsky says that he's a determinist because anything else would be tantamount to magic. And I appreciated Sapolsky saying that because, that helps me understand a determinist argument. If there's something that stands outside of the causal chain, it would stand outside of science as we know it and understand it, and this would constitute magic. Now, Sapolsky's obviously using that dismissively. He's basically saying that a belief in free will would be a belief, would be superstition. But I accept that as the price of free will, and I do argue that something stands outside of the causal chain, and that's what the free and free will is meant. That's where the free comes from, because this is another difficulty with this debate is what do we mean by these terms? And to me, the free and free will means that something does stand outside of the causal chain. Now, it doesn't have unlimited power. This isn't omniscience or omnipotence. It's just that something has some control over some level of binary choice: on, off, up, down, left, right, eyes open, eyes closed. I have a thought experiment that I believe establishes free will over a binary, over an on off, eyes open, eyes closed, as a sufficient and necessary condition for language. Just to show how just the slightest iota of free will is a sufficient basis for all language to flow, to show how powerful that would be. Because a lot of materialists, determinists, I believe, commit a fallacy when they equate free will to being omniscience or omnipotence, when all it takes is just the barest modicum of free will to be the basis of all language. So I gave a response to that, and then gentleman here responded and asked me to chime in again. And I'm just going to read the last part of my response, and then take it from there. I think he's saying, and this is me talking about the essence of the first comment, I think he's saying that since the origin of our decisions can never be known, they de facto just happen to us. We just witness them like any other fact. The problem with this line of thinking is that removing the witness from the authorship of decisions takes away the witness's only means of being known. If the witness did not have free will, it could never call attention to itself. Since it clearly has, free will in the intuitive sense must be a fact. So there we have it, as clearly as I believe it can be put. On the one side, when I listen to somebody like Sabine Hossenfelder, hopefully I got her name right. When I listen to Sam Harris, and when I listen to the essence of what Sapolsky is saying, although he's not, in my judgment, very clear in what he's arguing. He sort of throws the kitchen sink at it instead of really distilling it down. But what I think that commenter was saying was, regardless of what you call it, there's a witness, consciousness, to which choices are appearing: left, right, chocolate, vanilla, and to which the answers to those choices are appearing. I went left instead of right. I chose chocolate instead of vanilla. Sam Harris uses the following thought experiment. He asks you to think of a movie. And then once you've thought of a movie, he asks, what was that movie? And so when I did the thought experiment, what came to me was Rocky II. Rocky II was one of the first movies I saw in the theater. And then he asks you, okay, now that you have this movie, how did you choose that movie? His point being, you didn't. That movie just came to you, right? I can't explain why Rocky II was the movie that came to me. And so what Sam Harris is saying is that the choice appeared to you, right? This choice to engage in the thought of experiment, and then this choice to choose a movie. And then that movie came to you out of nowhere. And because you can't explain where that answer came from, you have no free will over that answer. Now, this would sound very compelling. This would be like, if we were playing chess here, I'd be like, uh-oh, I'd have to really study the board and be like, I might have gotten checkmated there. But here's the flip on that. And the move then in this game of chess and this game of debate that I don't believe that determinists can recover from. I get what you're saying. As a conscious witness, choices happen to me. I move through my day, and constantly there are choices that I didn't choose to have in the environment. When I'm driving, change lanes or stay in my lane. When I enter a bank building, there's often the, revolving door, which is heavy to push. And then sometimes there's one of those side doors that's open, easier to go into. That's a binary choice I didn't set up. I choose one of those. The choices appear to me. And what I believe at root, all of the determinists are arguing is that the choices appear to me and the choosing appears to me as well. And since I can't explain where the choosing comes from, I have no control over it. Therefore, I have no free will. Here's the pushback. And here's the move that I believe that no determinists can recover from. When you do that, when you make that move, when you say there's this witness to whom these things are happening, you divorce that witness from the authorship of choices. You remove that witness from the authorship of decisions. But when you do that, you remove that witness from its only way of making itself known. So this is one of the criticisms of the idea of consciousness as an epiphenomenon. The idea would be generally that, life is well underway, has solved all these things like, metabolism and, recreating itself, moving through the environment, all sorts of things before it reaches a level of complexity where consciousness starts to dawn. The problem with epiphenomenalism when it comes to consciousness is that consciousness would be like moss on a rock. It would be like a security camera up in the corner. You could argue that it's an epiphenomenon. You could argue that at some level of complexity, it just shows up. The problem is it would have no way of making itself known. And since it has, we're talking about it now, you're thinking about it. I'm appealing to you as a conscious being. I'm telling you about my conscious process. I'm calling attention to myself, to my consciousness. How would consciousness make itself known if consciousness is not the author of decisions? And what would free will be but consciousness authoring decisions? That's exactly what free will would be. And what determinists are doing, what Sam Harris is doing, what that commenter was doing, was divorcing decisions from the witness. Because, again, from the determinist's point of view, the decisions happen to the witness, right? The choices, the binaries, chocolate or vanilla, left or right, just show up, and the answers to those decisions just show up in conscious experience. But if we choose to look at it that way, what we've done is separate the witness from the authorship of the decision. And you then have no way for the witness to make itself known. This is the central fact that no determinist can explain. And what they're really doing is engaging, however well-intentioned, however logically, obfuscation, obscurantism. They're saying because there's this mystery here that can't be solved, there is no free will. And that would make sense all the way up to the point where you realize that free will would have to be consciousness making a decision, authoring a decision, and there would be no way for consciousness to make itself known if it couldn't author decisions. Consciousness in principle could be there. Consciousness could just be the fact that things happen when asteroids collide with each other in deep space. This is a happening, and we could just say, well, just the fact of it is consciousness itself, except that consciousness does not make itself known when asteroids are colliding with each other. Here on Earth, in human bodies, and I believe consciousness goes all the way down, like anything that is alive is conscious. Consciousness is constantly making itself known. That's the whole point. And the only way that consciousness could make itself known is through the operation of free will. So that's my best attempt at explaining that. I get now why somebody like Sabine Hossenfelder would say that free will just makes no sense, because the choices appear out of nowhere to a witness and their answers appear out of nowhere to a witness. But that witness could never make itself known if it was not itself the source of those answers. And I think that holds. I think that is check and mate in the debate over determinism and free will. All right. Thanks for clicking on this.